Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of Everything Science. On today's episode, we'll be looking at 5 animals that you probably didn't know up until recently were on the brink of extinction, and our efforts to save them. Don't forget to click that like and subscribe, and let's jump in. Animal conservation has a long and complicated history in the US. From the moment settlers arrived from the Old World, they began hunting indigenous species for food and to sell on open markets. As early as 1607, Captain John Smith, yeah, that John Smith, reported that the French were shipping an alarming rate of more than 25,000 beaver pelts per year from the Americas to Europe, and by 1650, they were completely eliminated from the East Coast. Overhunting and fishing continued for hundreds of years and caused the decline of hundreds, if not thousands, of species across the US. Funny enough, the man to change all this was the avid hunter Theodore Roosevelt. On a single expedition in 1909, Roosevelt and his companions hunted and killed more than 11,000 animals, including scores of elephants, rhinos, and lions. Roosevelt loved hunting, and he feared if nothing was done, many species would go extinct long before future generations could hunt them for sport. In his presidency, Roosevelt created more than 200 national parks and reserves, saving more than 230 million acres of land for public use, and laid the groundwork for future preservation organizations yet to come. So now let's look at the 5 species that you probably didn't know up until recently were on the verge of extinction. First up, the Canada goose. To anyone living in Canada or the northern US, it might be hard to believe, but these tanks with wings were once almost vanished from the face of the earth. Before the 19th century, geese were commonplace in the colder parts of North America, but by the early 20th century, overhunting and loss of habitat had led to a serious decline in geese populations. The giant Canada goose, a subspecies of the Canada goose, was even thought to be extinct for over a decade before its reemergence in 1962. Scared at the alarming population declines, private groups and then later state governments started restoration programs. Geese were protected, fed, and released. From there, they multiplied, and now, for better or worse, there are more than 3.5 million geese in the US alone. Next up, the American alligator. The star of reality shows like Gator Boys and Swamp People, the American alligator once neared extinction. By the 1950s, demand for hides and uncontrolled hunting in the southeast US had nearly wiped out the species after a 200 million year run on planet Earth. If that wasn't so sad, it would almost be impressive. By 1967, the American alligator was listed as an endangered species, meaning it couldn't legally be hunted. But by 1987, populations had rebounded enough that the government removed it from the list, but they kept a tight control on hunting. Today, there are thought to be more than 5 million alligators in the South, with an estimated 1.25 million in Florida alone, so keep that in mind before your next visit to the Sunshine State. Next up, grizzly bears. Bears in North America have had a pretty rough swing at things. In 1922, the California grizzly went extinct, and by 1964, so was the Mexican grizzly. Back when Lewis and Clark first explored, 50 to 100,000 grizzly bears roamed the West. As their habitat was destroyed by logging, mining, and land development, these powerful bears were threatened with extinction. What makes things worse is that bears reproduce slowly, taking up to 6 years to have their first litter. Nowadays, there are about 55,000 grizzlies in the US, most of which call Alaska home. While they're still considered endangered in the continental US, conservation efforts in national parks have done a lot to protect them and help their recovery. Next up, wild turkeys. Few people are alive today who would remember when wild turkeys teetered on the edge of extinction after almost being eaten into oblivion. But how that fate was avoided represents to some one of the greatest conservation stories in American history. Prior to the arrival of European colonists, there were thought to be about 10 million wild turkeys inhabiting every corner of what's now the continental United States. But in only a few generations, the birds were reduced to just 2% of their original numbers. From a population of 10 million, we get down to just a couple 100,000 continent-wide between 1910 and 1920. In all, turkeys disappeared from 17 states and may have gone the way of the dodo, if not for the economic collapse of 1929. With the Depression, a lot of rural residents, mostly small farmers, had no market and no jobs, and so they abandoned their farms and moved to the city. Over time, and with the help of conservationists, the areas they abandoned reverted back to the native shrublands that the turkeys relied upon. Now, through a combination of hunting limits and an increase in their natural habitat, there are more than 6 million wild turkeys strutting about. Last but not least, our furry little friend, the beaver. Before European intervention, these bucktooth rodents numbered more than 60 million, but after 2 centuries of over-trapping, incentivized by the lucrative pelt trade industry, they numbered no more than a couple 100,000. There were even once beavers in the UK and Europe before they were hunted to extinction. There were even beavers in Europe and the UK before they were hunted to extinction. Why were they hunted? Most people know about beaver pelts, which, up until synthetic clothing took off, was one of the most water-resistant and thermally insulating materials you could buy for coats and other clothing due to the densely packed, water-resistant beaver hairs. But beyond that, secretions from beaver scent glands were important ingredients in many medicines and perfumes at the time. It wasn't until restocking programs in the 1920s and 30s that these furry friends started making their comeback. Nowadays, there's somewhere between 10 and 15 million beavers across North America. The story of those 5 animals is largely the same. Overhunting and loss of habitat caused a decrease in their populations, but over time, and with the help of conservationists, their numbers started to rise again. Well, that's it for today on Everything Science. If you like this content and are interested in seeing more, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date on Everything Science.